like I've paid back loans. Like my wife had a shit ton of loans. I had loans. And that doesn't mean I want to see other people suffer unreasonably.
Yeah.
But I'm also not like, I'm not a dickbag in that way, but I'm also not an unreasonable asshole to say, hey, why don't we pay off everyone's student loans?
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. And if you're making the point that that was a reasonable standard, it's a completely unreasonable standard.
Yeah.
Well, I get why you want it, but it's an unreasonable standard to expect.
Arguably, the biggest feature, one of the other biggest features, besides the $10,000 to $20,000 of relief that they're giving to people, is also the payment.
We'll talk.
caps.
By the way, we'll talk about the difference and why that is. But go ahead.
Yes, the payment caps that they have in place.
Yes.
So currently, you are capped at 10% of your monthly income. Like your loan repayment can't exceed 10% of your monthly income, and that's literally being halved with this legislation.
Yep.
So like your loan payments can no longer exceed 5% of your monthly income, which is a lot of fucking money for a lot of people. Generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go through this a little bit, which I find to be very interesting. First part is there's going to be one final extension of the student repayment pause, right? They're going to extend that through December 31st, right? Through the end of the year. January 1, 2023, you got to start paying your student loans again. I think that's good. I think it's good for them. I think the pause is good. An additional pause is good. But I also think it's good to say this is the final one. Because then you're done with the like, is it going again? Is it going again?
Will they or won't they? Like as we approach the deadline coming up. So
right. And also not only that, you're pushing it to the end of the year, which means you're pushing it past the midterms. I think that's also very smart. Like, get it done.
And Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We're right. But we're done with the pause. So there, like you said, there's no will they, won't they type of shit coming in a number of months. They're done. They already told you, don't pretend that you didn't know. You don't have to be, oh, what? Oh, no, they're telling you, right? They're not saying, hey, here's another pause. They're saying this is the final pause. And I think being explicit about that, whether you like it or not, I think that gives people an understanding. They go, okay, I can prepare for that. Right. So that was part one, which I think is smart. Again, the will they, won't they kind of thing is hurt you in the long run, right? Because people start to create headcanon as to what is reality, regardless of if it makes sense. But when you just tell them definitively, this is it, they can get used to it. The second part, which is the big part, is providing targeted debt relief to lower and middle income families. If you have, this is quoting them, to smooth the transition back to repayment and help borrowers at highest risk of delinquencies or default one payment resumes, the Department of Education will provide up to $20,000 in debt cancellation to Pell Grant recipients with loans held by the Department of Education, and up to $10,000 in debt cancellation to non-Pell Grant recipients. Borrowers are eligible for this relief if the individual income is less than $125,000 or $250,000 for the household, right? If you're married or what have you. That $10,000 and $20,000 difference is incredibly important. And I'll tell you why. I don't know if you realize this, Brad, but this speaks to black people very specifically. Joe Biden think he's slick. We see you, Joe. We see you. Most loans, the predominant amount of federal loans for college for black students are Pell Grants, right? So they know that, and they know that African Americans suffer more when it comes to taking out loans as far as how much, they can pay back, because obviously there's massive financial discrepancies, yada, yada, yada. These are all things we, as normal functioning human adults, understand. That's why they're doubling the relief for that group, because they are twice, their hole is twice as deep as someone who doesn't have to get Pell Grants, but is getting federal loans. I love it. I love that they didn't say that explicitly, like black people get 20,000 and white people get 10, right? Because there's definitely white people who have Pell Grants. Like that's not that doesn't happen, especially like poor folks in like super poor folks in, you know, in the South and the Midwest, right? They definitely get it. But percentage wise, when it comes to black people in this country who take federal loans for college, the vast majority of them use Pell Grants. So I think that's really good. I think that's a really clever way of handling it. But there's also keeping the eligibility to $125,000. I think it's also incredibly smart because it's real hard to make the argument. I see conservatives trying to make it. They're not very good arguments of like, this is helping the rich. Like $125,000 might sound like a lot of money. Shit, it's more than I make. But it might sound like a shit ton of money. Not if you live in New York, it's not. Right? So the vast majority of people in this situation where they got 10 or 20,000 or less dollars in debt that would be wiped out completely, they're not making anywhere close to $125,000. So you're covering it, but like people often make the argument like $125,000 so much. Yeah, if you live in Kansas, dude. Like New York City is expensive as fuck. Like you kind of need to make six figures to like not live in a shoebox in New York, right? And even people who make six figures live in shoeboxes in New York. So like, yeah, they could move. I think you should. I think those apartment costs are fucking ridiculous. But $125,000 is not $125,000 everywhere in the country. They're just that money doesn't spend the same. So I think 125 is a pretty reasonable amount. So what are your thoughts on this?
Again, I look at the manageable stuff too. Basically, they also raise the amount of income that's non-discretionary. So basically, if you earn under 225% of the federal poverty level, you don't have to make monthly payments, which is a big deal. So that equates to about in the release that they put out, that equates to about a $15 an hour minimum wage for an individual. So like that's a pretty big deal. So like if for some reason like the job that you have is not paying great right now, but like you're still kind of protected there. Monthly interest isn't going to balloon as well. As long as you're making monthly payments, they'll keep the interest. It won't just keep accumulating on top of that. So, which is also a big deal as well. So this is all, again, everyone focused for months on the forgiveness part of the equation, and that's what people keyed in on. But I think that arguably the future protections are even more impactful, and I think will also be highly visible in people's lives. And I think that that's part of the unsung story that, weirdly enough, progressives never really thought about because they were just so damn focused on the number. So
I am amazed that a guy, or let me rephrase that. I am amazed that the Biden-Harris administration, who have been lambasted by and we're progressive people, but I'm talking we're neoprocs. We're talking about people who throw the goalpost all the way to the fucking moon and are like, why didn't you get there? Like these are people who are completely unreasonable. These are the whatever that woman's name from the Bad Faith podcast, Nina Turner, these like people who never win, who can't win because their point of views are ridiculous, right? They sound really great on paper, but none of it ever fucking makes sense, right? But that's who we're talking about. Those group of people rose Twitter, right? For other folks. Those people have lambasted the Biden-Harris administration for this particular topic and not being progressive enough and not wanting to do everything else. They came in and they ate your lunch because they actually thought about what it is to help people specifically, not generality bullshit, not going, just relieve all debt. Well, that's not really a policy, is it? Right? Yeah. This is the difference between, and I fucking hate to bring this up, because I'm trying really hard not to relitigate past elections. But this is the difference of going Medicare for all. Cool, Bernie, that's a great plan. Hey, Elizabeth Warren, what do you think? Here's the details on how I would do it. Fuck you, Snake, you dumb bitch. I hate your guts. That's the difference. She had a plan, a real plan with real details, and she got lambasted for it. No details. Carry him on your shoulders as the great fucking savior of democracy.
If I may, I'd also like to take my own victory lap, because if you go, I think it was
Brad, allow me to key it up for you.
Okay, yeah.
Brad, take your dude I told you lap. Go ahead.
Yeah. Please. So I think it was not the last time they extended the payments, but the time before, where we talked about like how like, hey, you know, this, you know, it'd be cool to figure this out, what's going on. And I'm pretty sure I said, here's what you do. Just keep suspending the payments, like keep the payment suspension in place. And then when you get a little closer to the midterms, that's when you drop the fucking loan forgiveness. So it's fresh in people's mind.
Yep.
So when they're going through the polls, like you have Democrats who can go out there across the country and campaign on the fact that Democrats are relieving your student debt and you're not going to have to make a loan payment this year. And you fucking drop this shit when it is the most impactful. They probably have been working on this particular plan for months. Like they have they've probably had this chambered in the gun for months. They didn't have to roll it out because nobody was paying on their student loans anyway. There was it's not like they were saving people money, or it's not like people were spending money that they could have been saving. No, we had a suspension. We had a pause on the student loan program since fucking COVID went into effect. They just kept renewing that. And what did they do? They saved this until it would be the most impactful.
Yep.
Seems like a pretty good fucking strategy if your goal is to, one, help people, which this does, and two, win elections, which this also should help contribute towards.